20 minutes to do justice to each of these speakers. It is after this, the first and the second topic presentation by various speakers. The second topic is going to be done by Dr. Habib Bello Salau, Department of Computer Engineering from Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. After this, we will welcome constructive criticism, contributions from audience, and that is going to be for 15 minutes only. Please, let us be brief and maintain decorum. Thank you, everybody. You are welcome to this platform.
We thank you, Chairman of this occasion. Thank you, sir. Professor Opateye Johnson. Professor Johnson Opateye. Are you in the room?
Not one.
All right. While we await his response, can we invite then the second speaker, Dr. Habib Bello Salau, from the Department of Computer Engineering, Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, to present his lecture on translating research objectives into measurable questions and logical digital surveys. Dr. Salau.
Good afternoon, ma. Thank you, ma. Good afternoon, ma.
Your video, please.
Good afternoon. We need you to put on your video. That's our ground rule. You will need to please put on your video to deliver the lecture. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
I don't know
Thank you.
if
We can see
video
you
on now.
Yes, yes. We can see you now.
Okay, thank you very much. So I should go ahead and share the screen, right?
Go ahead, please.
Thank you, ma'am.
Remember, you have 20 minutes.
Thank you. Okay. So I can go ahead, right?
Go ahead, please.
Yes, you can.
Your time has started.
You have 20 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, Professor Mitware. Good afternoon, Professor Moniola Oluwa and other professors here present, and the entire team of Virtual Institute for Capacity Building in Higher Education, as well as my distinguished colleagues from various higher institutions within the country and outside. My name is Habib Bello Salau, and I'll be presenting on the topic, translating research objectives into measurable questions and logical digital survey. We'll run through this presentation by asking ourselves, why does it really matter? Why did it matter to translate research objectives into measurable questions? Then we try to examine a research objective, try to ensure that follows the SMART rules, that is the SMART, which we are going to see soon. Then we are going to look at the logical survey flow, as well as the best practices and some of the open access tools that can be used to administer some of this survey. Then we try to examine some of the feedback from a case study here in ABU. Then we look at the question and answer segments. Statistics have shown that you may have a very smart research objective, a very solid research objective, but oftentimes it always fails to address the goal of the research. And the question is why? So this is often attributed to the fact that, yes, the objective may be smart, but the way you crafted the survey questions does not really give you data that could aid in the realization of the goal of the research. And therefore, when you have good research objective, but have a very weak or bad set of questions, it will just lead to a waste of time, and you can just have a false insight or deductions. This actually shows the significance or importance of having a very good measurable research questions from your research objectives. And this is supported by the Journal of Survey Statistics, which was published in 2023, which says about 70% of research fails due to poor questions design. Therefore, there is need to ensure that for us to be able to deduct or have meaningful deductions, our research questions or the survey questions must always be crafted in such a way that we help extract valid data which will aid our strong conclusions or deductions towards the realization of the entire research aim. So also, according to a survey from Qualtrics, it shows that most surveys with clear logic have 25% higher completion rate by participants, because it is a normal trend now that when you administer some of these data, some of this survey, oftentimes you find you observe that respondents are reluctant in answering, or probably at times they feel bored in answering those questions, and you'll be struggling in extracting those data. And some of the loopholes is because there is no clear logic flow, which we are going to examine as we go through this presentation. But before that, let's look at an objective. When we say an objective is smart, an objective is smart when it meets those 5 metrics of being specific, measurable, achievable, and also relevant to the entire research, and is what always time bound. For example, if I set an objective to say to improve student learning, is it a good or bad objective? The obvious answer is that it's a bad objective. And why is it a bad objective? It is a bad objective because it is not being specific to improve student learning. You are improving student learning in what? Then the next question you ask yourself is that how do we measure it? How do we measure such objectives? We are trying to improve student learning. What are the metrics, or what are the things or the variables we want to use to measure this student learning? Is it achievable? Because the scope is too wide, not being specific will make it difficult to be achievable. And as such, we may not be able to ascertain the relevance of such objective to the realization of the research goal, as well as the timeliness. But let's look at another case of an objective that is said to increase course completion by 20% in 6 months through better engagement and progress tracking. Now, let's get into this other metrics of SMART. Being specific, yes, it is specific. You want to increase course completion rate of what? Of students within a certain durations of time. Is it measurable? Yes, it's measurable, because we want to measure it by what? 20% increment rate. Is it achievable? Yeah, it is achievable because the scope is small and it's being what? Specific. Now, is it relevant? Yes, it's relevant to the overall goal of the research, which is towards improving the delivery, and it is what? Time bound. Therefore, as a term rule, it is always advisable that for one objective, you should have one measurable outcome. And outcome that could be present that, yes, with this outcome, I can say that I've achieved or realized the objective. Now, how do we turn these SMART objectives into SMART questions? So still picking up that example which stated earlier, that to increase course completion by 20% in 6 months through better engagement and progress tracking. The overall research question could be probably something like, how can improved learner engagement and consistent progress tracking increase course completion rate by 20% within 6 months? However, we need to break this down when we want to craft it into a survey questions. Remember that in our survey questions, which we are going to look at the front of some of these Google Forms as we goes on, we have to break it down in such a way that participants can actually relate to the question while avoiding some loopholes, ensuring logical flow, and avoiding repetitive questions. So how do you go about it? Now, for example, we observe that there are 2 variables in that objective. We want to see how better engagement and progress tracking. For me to actually administer some survey questions to extract information on better engagement, I could ask the participant that, okay, how often does the participant participated in the structure-led live section, maybe webinar and lecture, and say, okay, use a linear scale of 1 to 5 to actually respond. Which 1 means never, and probably 5 means very often, maybe several times per week. We could have things like a scale of 2 means maybe rarely, maybe once or twice throughout the duration of the course, and maybe 3 means sometimes, maybe once monthly, and probably maybe 4, we can say 4 could be maybe once in a week or so. So this linear scale of 1 to 5 will tell us how often is this of such students is actually participating in live section. And also, we can also ask students like, how often do you join discussions on forum or your group chat on the LMS and the likes? Whereas if you want to test, if we can ask questions to actually extract information on progress tracking, like things like how often did you check your progress dashboard? Maybe we can say, okay, on a scale of 0 to 5, or maybe 0 to 4, maybe 5 very often, maybe 0. Not, I don't really bother, I don't check. Maybe never, you've never checked your progress. Some of these informations can now be extracted and used to make deductions on how to increase this student participation. However, in designing our survey question, there are some common mistakes that we need to avoid. Example, some questions are so vague that you won't even know what exactly you as a researcher that you're administering those questions, what is your intent about it? For example, having a survey question like, do you like the course? Do you like the course seems too vague, because you don't the participant may not know what exactly is your intent. Or you can cast it and say, okay, rate the course content clarity on a scale of 1 to 5, which maybe probably 5 means very clear, and maybe 1 not clear, and so on. And another mistake we also make when designing our survey question is what is known as double barrel. Double barrel is that you ask this question in such a way that those questions could actually be splitted to aid clarity, but you lump them together, like asking that maybe you develop an application and you're asking some of the participants or users of that application that, is the app fast and easy? Is the app fast and easy? Yes, the app can be fast, but maybe the interface is difficult to navigate. And the app can be slow, but it's easy to use. So it's a double-barrel question. Why don't you consider splitting that question and ask it in the French form? Also, things like, don't you love our platform? Can you cast it to make it to how satisfied are you with the current platform we are using? This will ensure that reliable data, and also it makes it easier for your participant to respond, and there will be a clarity of thought. Another thing we need to actually bear in mind is the logical survey flow, which is sometimes refers to a branching. For example, you develop an application and you expect that, okay, you want to collect some feedbacks towards improving the applications in the next phase. So your first question is, you ask somebody that, or probably you are using an online tool. You ask the questions that, do you use online learning tools? So the person say yes. So that means you can now proceed which tools, so that it will be specific. Or if it says no, I'm not sure it's necessary for you to start asking which tools. If it says no, I don't use an online, you can only ask them, why are you not using it? Why not? Such as to make your what? Just to make your deductions or conclusions solid. Because so this logical flow ensures that once you ask a question, the person is not conversant with it. You don't need to ask another question, and you probably have to end on appreciate that person for his or her time. So I will talk about how these survey questions look like. There is a need for us to look at some of the digital tools that can be used to administer our survey. So basically, I'll be mentioning some open source, self-hosted tools that could be used. The popular one includes the Google Form, the Kobo Toolbox, your Microsoft Form, the Qualtrics, Simple Survey. There are several ones. This is just to mention a few because of the time constraint. Now, any of these digital survey forms wants to use, there are some ground rules to them. You have to log into the website. For example, let's assume we are trying to pick this Google form. You can log into docs.google.com/forms. And when you get there, the first thing you need to do is to first create the project title. You have to save using your project title. Probably on this same objective you are saying, you can say, okay, your project title will be something like survey on learning engagement, progress tracking, and course completion. That could be a typical project title which you can use to save your form. And oftentimes, you'll be required to tell us the purpose of the questionnaire, maybe to understand how engagement and progress tracking tools affect course completion rate on a particular platform, then you also have to declare confidentiality in order to put in to ensure that your participants will be safe, we feel safe that whatever data I'm providing will not be used against me and will be used solely for the purpose of that research, as well as also anonymizing whatever response that are coming. Then you can now go further to sectionalize all the questions into different forms. You can have questions like background or demographic, questions like learners engagement, progress, and each of these sections can have some forms of question that could be used to extract information from participants towards being able to make such effective deduction. Now, let's look at a typical case study here in ABUGLC. Probably we have an objective that says, okay, we want to assess students' course completion rates and the contributing factor within a defined 6-month study period. Now, it is assumed that the research have been done, they've administered their survey questions, and they have questions like, how many hours per week do you spend on this course? After collecting this data and the information, it was processed, and it was observed that over 60% of top-out of this course actually spend less than 2 hours per week on their course. So which actually give us an insight that, okay, this is why some people were registered for course and probably end up not completing the course. So the next thing is, what actions can we now take? And that is why they can come up with, okay, why don't we embark on micro learning modules, whereby we have small chunks of, we split the modules into small chunks, maybe 5, 7 minutes, 8 minutes video, and let's see how it's going to affect the completion rates. Now, based on the background I've given thus far, let's look at some of these objectives and see how we can recast it. For example, if you have an objective like, I make teaching better, is that objective not vague? Obviously, it is vague, because how do you make teaching better? But we can actually try to recast such objective in order to be smart, though to be smart. So we can decide, okay, how do you want to recast this objective to be smart? Bearing in mind that it has to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So these are some of the vague objectives. So there are basic checklists we need to ask ourselves whenever we are designing our survey questions. So each objective, one idea per question. Each of your questions must carry a specific ideas, and you have an end goal where you are going. We can use the skills to count, maybe a scale of 1 to 5, where we rate them cardinal skills. We can also include skip logic. Skip logic in the sense that once we ask you a question, if you are not conversant with that, just like the case study of the applications development we give, then you move on to next and so on. So these are some of the checklists. Therefore, the key takeaway from this short presentation is that we must always have a very smart objective, a clear and measurable objective, and that will be the key towards setting up your smart questions. And having a smart objective and smart question will go a long way in ensuring that the overall aim or goal of your research is being achieved. However, in developing your survey question, also always use logic flow to guide your user, and ensure you pick the right digital tools you are conversant with, being it Google Docs, Google Box, amongst others. Then test your survey and launch. So thank you. These are some of the references, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salau. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. Thank you. Please note your questions and observations. We'll go to the next speaker before we start with the question and answers. It's my pleasure to welcome Professor Johnson Patton. Professor Patton, please.
Yes. Thank you very much, Professor Olaniyi, and this module coordinator, all my senior colleagues and colleagues and the participants. So permit me to share my screen.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So what we are considering quickly is minimizing response bias
Yes.
and ensuring question clarity in software research design. That is what we are looking at quickly. And therefore, we have the following learning outcomes. By the end of this particular presentation, all our participants will be able to analyze sources of bias, survey questions, apply strategies to minimize response bias, demonstrate principles of question clarity, and also be able to evaluate overall survey design. And we are going to the content. And in this particular content, we are going to look at introduction to survey design, understanding response bias, types of sources of response bias, and strategies to minimize response bias, question clarity, and some of the examples of clear and unclear survey questions, and how to evaluate a survey instrument quality. And of course, as my colleague just said, there may be some takeaways from this particular interaction. When you are talking about surveys, surveys are tools and vital tools for collecting data in research.
Prof, please use slideshow.
Thank you.
Please use slideshow, please.
Yes, it's already on slideshow. So we can say that most of the frequently used or commonly used research design is survey design. And we have different types of survey design, where the cross-sectional survey is the most utilized survey research design. Then our data accuracy often depends on clear questions and non-biased responses. But when you have pure wording or unclear structure of your question items, that can distort your findings. So the focus in this particular interaction is for us to understand and to address response bias and question clarity. When we are talking about response bias, we are saying that it's a systematic deviation of responses from the truth, when either from the researcher side or from the respondent side. Anytime the responses are not actually given the correct status and opinion on any item, then there's an introduction of response bias. And the causes of this are not far-fetched. When your questions are not being worded the way it should be worded, when your formatting of the items are lopsided, and when you have social pressures because of other variables around you that is not making you to get your items correct, the consequence is this, that there will be reduced validity and your results at the end of the day will be misleading because your content validity and predictive validity will not be acceptable. There are types of response bias, and I will just give you 7 of them shortly. We have what we call social desirability bias, in which the respondent gives social acceptable answer. That is, answer that he thought would be acceptable to the researcher. Number 2, we have the dissent bias, in which the response always, the respondent disagree with the items. You give an instrument for them to complete, and you see them just say strongly disagree, and not at all, not at all, not at all, to all the items. It's dissent bias. Acquiescence bias is the opposite of dissent bias. When your respondent is given, positive response and agree to every statement and say they are strongly agree, and you see them taking strongly agree throughout the instrument. You also have the extreme response bias, when a participant consistently choose the most extreme option. If the option is on scale 1 to 4 or 1 to 5, a respondent may now say, well, I don't want to tick 1. Let me just tick 5, 5, 5, 5, 5 on a checklist or on a rating scale. Then that is extreme response bias. We also have neutral response bias. There are this set of participants or respondents don't want anything to, they think they are doing the researcher a duty, and they'll say, no problem. Our own is not just to answer this particular scale of the instrument. And they will leave all the omitted item, one way or the other, without being answered. And they will not answer it. So they are being neutral every time. All of them just tick neutral because they don't want to go to the left or to the right. So they tick neutral on your survey instrument. That is neutral response bias. Then we have some that have personal bias because it may come from the researcher's side and also from the respondent side because of our values, because of our opinions, because of our experiences, because of our preference. The tendency is there for you as a researcher to introduce your tendency into the item, and that will distort the result. Or even the respondent themselves, because of their cultural and religious bigotry, they may want to introduce that to impress you and to allow that particular culture to affect their responses. That is what we call personal bias. We also have demand bias, and this is actually the act of guessing purpose of that particular research. The respondent will take a survey instrument and we look at the title of the research. Okay, this is what this person is looking for. And because of that particular purpose, on that basis, they will make responses, not only on the content of the item they are giving. The sources of bias in question. You know, when you have a leading or suggestive wording, when you have double-barrel question, as my former presenter just mentioned, which I will elaborate on that. And also, when you have loaded or emotional language, loaded questions that are loaded. Then when you have unbalanced response options, and also when you have cultural or contextual assumptions, all these things actually generate bias. For example, when you say don't agree on online learning is better, don't you agree? It's an item of a survey question. Online learning is better. Already, even the researcher has introduced a bias by even saying that online learning is better. And this is better to what? What is the relative betterment of this particular online learning? So you can say, how effective do you find online learning compared to classroom learning? So how do we minimize response bias? No, we need to use neutral or balanced wording. Let's use neutral or balanced wording of our item. And when we say balanced wording of our item, you give room for people that are going to be positive, people that are going to be negative, and people that are going to be neutral in the response. Number two, then you ensure that your software research instrument is anonymous and you hold their identity confidentiality. It is very important because if you ask them to write their names or their identity, that may actually introduce bias. But when you are neutral, you are not asking for their identity, or you just use an index that nobody can identify who is responding to that particular survey, then it's likely you are going to get a good data. So randomize your question orderly. Randomization is very, very important. You ensure that all the items, when you are driving the item, each item has equal chance of being selected, not because you want to be biased. Then use balanced response scale. You have different response scale. Let your response scale be balanced. When you are using strongly agree, disagree, strongly disagree. Yeah, like as we say, because you want to balance the scale, there should be a neutral point. Somebody who wants to be neutral to that particular item. Number 5, conduct pilot testing and pre-test. It is very, very important. In validation of your survey research question, Pilot testing is very, very important, in which you administer that instrument to the respondent that will not participate, to other people that will not participate in the main study. How should we ensure clarity of our questions in survey? Number one, just use direct and simple language. You are not actually selling your grammar. We are not looking at the degree of your tautology or analogy or physiology or everything logy. This is not what your respondents are looking for. They are looking for simple grammar, well-constructed statement, and direct language they will understand. Avoid jargon or fake terms, and be specific in wordings of your research items, and maintain logical flow and consistent construction of your item. So let me quickly give you some of the examples of clear survey questions. If a statement says, do you regularly attend community meetings? So regularly is relative. So, and that is why it's a fake term, because how often do you count that particular regular? So what are you going to do? You can reframe it. How many community meetings have you attended in the last 3 months? That one is specific. Another question may say, do you agree with the government that government should improve education and health care? If somebody is reading this particular item, somebody may want education only to be improved. Another person may want health care to be improved. Lump them in one item is what my brother called double barrel. Because of this, you cannot ask them, do you agree that the government should improve education? What is your disposition of government improvement on health care? So then number 3, how satisfied are you with your life and job? This is another double barrel question, wherein you are asking for 2 things. Somebody may be satisfied with his life, may not be satisfied with his job. Another person may be satisfied with his job, may not be satisfied with his life. So which one do you really want the respondent to respond to here? So life satisfaction and job satisfaction, they differ. So you can now say, how satisfied are you with your life overall? How satisfied are you with your current job? It's being specific. Then you can also have, do you think social media negatively affects youth? You're already taking sides by introducing the word negatively. So it's a leading question because we have already given the answer. So what do you need to say? What impact, if any, do you think social media has on youth? Positive, negative, or no impact? Your respondent is the one to tick whichever one. Number 5, do you think your local leaders are doing enough? Doing enough to what extent? This is subjective and non-divine. But you can easily say, how effective do you think your local leaders are in addressing community issues? Very effective, somewhat effective, not effective, and don't know. We can also have some statements as your item. Instead of having question-based item, we can have statement item like, I always enjoy learning, which is also too general. You can say, I enjoy learning new topics covered in this course. Another statement says, online learning is good, helpful to students. Good and helpful. It's not everything that is good that is helpful. It's not everything that is helpful is good. So which one do you want them to do? It is double barrel statement. I believe, you can declare like this, I believe online learning can effectively improve my understanding of course material. Another statement, I participate a lot in class activities. This is fake, a lot. To what extent? Specify the frequency of engagement. You can easily say, I contribute to discussion 2 or 3 times a week between classroom sessions. Then the last one I will give is I participate in laboratory sessions. Participation in laboratory, in what sense? Which area of participation? This item is not telling us. So it is fake. It doesn't indicate quality, frequency, or depth of the engagement. But you can easily say, I carefully follow laboratory procedure during experiment. So these are some of the clear and unclear survey questions. But how will you evaluate a survey research instrument? Number one, review the question for clarity and neutrality, as I've mentioned. Give to peer or validate through an expert. Give it to people that are experts in measurement, in evaluation, and so on, for them to check the content validity and order and reliability of your instrument. This is the checklist to know the quality of the instrument. Number one, clear wording, balanced scale, logical order, cultural sensitivity, and consistent response option. So these are the things that
5 minutes to go.
Thank you. These are the
5
things
minutes
that you are going to use to ensure that your instrument is complete. So what is things that you are going to take away? You know, we have your instructor today have a lot of takes away for you. Number one, we have seen that response bias distorts truth. When your responses are biased, truth is distorted. Huh? But when your questions are clear, it ensures accuracy of understanding. When you use neutral language and you present your instrument, survey instrument with balanced scale, it is going to give you good results. I also say, when you have clear and concise and well-structured questions, this will lead to valid and reliable data. And when you process this reliable data, you get a reliable result, then your findings will also be reliable, and the decision that is taken on the basis of your finding will also be impactful. I want to say, good questions are the foundation of good data, and that is what the founder told us. So if your questions are not good in survey research, then your data will also be effort in futility. So these are some of our references, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Johnson Okwante, for the enlightenment and educative presentation. Yes, now we will go to the question time so that we can get responses from our able speakers. We all know the rules. Our grand rule is that if you want to ask a question, your video needs to be on. You should quickly introduce yourself, that is, tell your name and your institution. Then you can go ahead to ask a question or to make your contributions or comments. Please permit me to ask the facilitator for Module 11, Professor Nasiru Meturari, to anchor this session. And at the end of the session, we ask the chairman to give a closing remark before we ask our facilitator general to close today's live lecture. Professor Meturari, please take the floor.
Thank you very much, Deputy Facilitator General, Admin. You've already set the ground rules. So we begin with the first set of 5, interventions. And let me identify them. Chinyalu Ekwenife, Haruna Yahaya, Adebayo Olufunke, Taibu Bello, and Idris Onasanya, in that order, as the first batch. So, Chinyalu Ekwenife, please go ahead, unmute yourself and make your intervention.
Yeah, good afternoon, all. I'm Chinyalo Ekwenife from Nnamdi Azikiwe University. My question goes to Professor Johnson. I have 2 questions for him. One is where he said that when a respondent ticks strongly agree almost all the times, that is bias. I want to ask, what if actually the respondent agreed strongly with almost all of them? Would that make it bias? Then my second question
Okay,
is
quickly, please.
where he stated that the clear survey questions. One of them is that I believe online learning can effectively improve my understanding of course materials. That effectively improve. Does it not show that he has already defined what it is?
Okay, so thank you very much. I think he must have recorded the questions. Next, Haruna Yahaya.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Haruna Yahaya Abdullahi from Capital City University, Kano. My question is about aligning the objectives and the questions of my questionnaire. I heard where the presenter mentioned that each question should represent an objective. So, sir, my question is, if I have 3 objectives in my survey, does it mean I should have only 3 questions, or there is a way I am going to split down my questions to address those 3 objectives? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Adebayo Olufunke.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. My name is Adebayo Olufunke from Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta. My question is to Dr. Salau, and it's that do we have any limitation to the number of questions or the number of sections that we can answer during the online survey? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Shaibu Bello.
Thank you, Professor Shaibu Bello from Usman Danfodio University, Sokoto. My question is to Professor Johnson, and is that doesn't it require some time to use a 4-point Likert scale to take away neutrality so that to force a choice in order to avoid bias? Secondly, the question on community issues, is that not a multiple barrel? Which specific community issue? Because some people may be good with community issues and not with the others. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Finally, on this set, Idris Anasanya.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My name is Anasanya Idris from Yusuf Maitama Sule Federal University of Education, Kano. I want to direct the question to the speaker. The question is that, is it allowed in a survey to use 2 kinds of Likert scale? For example, a Likert scale that has agree, strongly agree, undecided, disagree, and strongly disagree. And in the same survey, you make use of a Likert scale that contains often, seldom, rarely agrees, like that. That is what I want the presenter to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we will pause at this stage and invite the speakers, beginning with the first speaker, Dr. Habib, to respond maybe in about 2-3 minutes maximum. Thereafter, Professor Fatay will also respond. Dr. Habib?
Thank you very much, Prof. Let me start by responding to the first question, which says that each objective must have its specific, just one question. No, each objective, the whole idea is that we want you to craft a research question in such a way that is going to address your set objective towards the realization of your overall research aim or goal. However, when you are trying to set the survey question, remember that you have to break down those research questions into a smaller chunk that you can use to extract information from participants. Having said that, let me respond to the second question, which says that is there a maximum number of survey sections? Yes, there's no maximum. Technically, there is no maximum number of survey sections. However, put in mind that when the sections are too much, it becomes overwhelming for your participants to respond. But you know the goal of your research, and you should, once you craft your research objective smartly and your research question smartly, it's going to guide what matters most and the most important information you can use to extract those information. Also, somebody asked about the Likert skills. Yes, there is no feasible, but it is always advisable to stick to a format so as not to get your respondents confused. If you are trying to use agree, strongly agree, adapt to it. If you want to use often, and the whole extent is just to make it easy for your respondents to understand the flow of your question. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Professor Opatei.
Thank you very much, Prof. To the questioner that is asking on what happened if the respondents responded as all together strongly agree to all the items. that means that the researcher had actually not done well. If your items, questions, or statements lead the researcher to think strongly agree throughout, it means that all your statements are just not leading to another. So there should be at times when any of the item of that course of that particular scale that we make the research the respondent to think strongly disagree. But if all of them are strongly agree, then something is wrong with those items. That we also have items that we can use to even confirm, the response to the preceding item. And in that case, it can be strongly disagree. Then the item that say, I believe effectively, when I use, I believe effectively improve, still, you see me that I did not put any option there. So if I put my response of somewhat effective, not at all, and so on and so forth. So I will specify the contour of the effectiveness. So on the 4-point Likert scale, I still want to retrain that there is nothing like 4-point Likert scale. Or you use a modified Likert scale that actually gives you strongly agree, agrees, disagree, and strongly disagree. Immediately you distort it. It's no more Likert scale. But you can tell us that we are using modified Likert scale. And if you now remove that particular neutral, and we said that why are we removing the neutral? Somebody decided not to respond, and you give him 3 marks. And somebody responded strongly disagree, and you give him 1 mark. How will it be? So, but in the schools of research, Palace, there are so many thoughts of this. Then, Likert scale can you use the same scale as your response format? It depends on the constructs and the variables you are looking at. If your variable will go with strongly agree and disagree and so on, use it for those items that relate to that particular variable. When you go to another section of your item, of your instrument, where it's actually measuring timeline or frequency, you cannot use strongly agree. You also use responses that are in line with the frequencies that you want to ask. But when you now have 10 items, you now use different response for each of the items. That is where the confusion will come. So, but it all depends on what you need and what you are looking for as a researcher to be able to know what response format will actually give you the right response or answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Time is ticking, and so I will invite the next set of 5, but please just ask your questions in 30 seconds. If we are getting out of time, the Solicitor General definitely will step in. So Professor Khadija Yahaya, Professor Olubukola Isa, Professor Jonathan Shetimi, Professor Ahmad Gaya, and Professor Mary Iwundu. Please take up the floor in that order. Professor Khadija, very brief, please ask your question directly because time is really, running out fast.
Thank you, sir. I'm Professor Khadija Yahaya Adelola from University of Ilorin. My question is to the last professor that when you talk about what is the minimum question for each objective, do we have any minimum question? Like if we have 3 objectives or 4 objectives, should it be even number or the question should be odd number, or you can use any of the anyone? Thank you.
So thank you very much. Professor Olubukola. Professor Jonathan Shetimi.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm Jonathan Shetimi from Delta State University, Abraka. Talking about biases in digital tools, is inclusivity not a major problem? That is access to digital tools. Does that not constitute bias?
Okay, thank you very much. Your question directed to who?
Directed to the first professor.
Okay. Next, Ahmad Gaya. Professor Ahmad Gaya.
Thank you, Chairman. My questions go to Professor Johnson. Which kind of scale should I use to avoid bias? Like, should I use the strongly agree, disagree, or can I use rate your agreement based on maybe number like 1, 2, 3, 4 to 10?
Thank you very much.
Avoid bias.
Okay. Professor Mary Iwundu.
Good afternoon, sirs. Yes, my question is to Professor Johnson. Professor Johnson, you mentioned using natural language, pretesting, and balance scales. Could you kindly explain what balance scales refer to here? Thank you
very much. Thank you very much. So let's have the respondents. Professor Olubukola, you are muted, so we couldn't take you. So next, Professor Opatei, you can start.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. So on the issue of minimum of questions, you find out that it's not the minimum of questions that is the problem. It depends on what you are looking for. Some constructs are not easy to concretize. And if you ask only 2 questions, it may not bring the meaning and it may not infer what you want. So the more questions you inject to that scale, the better. So we cannot say this is the minimum, this is the maximum, but it depends on how easy you can concretize the construct, because these constructs are not seen, but you want to use them and invoke them as if they exist. So the number of questions will depend on the nature of that particular construct and the nature of your objectives. Then on the issue of scale to avoid bias, there is no any scale that all scales are unbiased. It all depends on the item you introduce to the scale. It's not the scale that are biased, but the items that make up that particular scale, that is where we are introducing the bias. So whatever be your response scale, whether strongly agree, disagree, it depends on what you want. So, but the items that you use inside that particular scale is what you can use that can introduce bias, the way you state that those items and the way you ask the question. On the issue of balance scale, when you want to have a balance scale, we are talking about in all the items of the scale of your survey instrument, ensure that there are times your respondent will actually have positive response and negative response. That is just the thing. But if all your scale are just very satisfied, and so and that is all. Those are the 2 scale response scale that you have. You look at the very satisfied and satisfied. They are positive. What about those that are not not very satisfied and not satisfied? If you don't introduce that, your scale is not balanced. You balance your scale by ensure that you give room to both sides, and even for those that may be neutral, as the case may be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me quickly invite Dr. Habib to respond to the questions, very quickly also, as again, like I said, time is running out.
Okay.
Dr. Habib.
Thank you very much,
So
Prof.
quickly respond to some of the questions asked.
Okay, basically the questions asked on inclusivity. The digital tools itself cannot introduce inclusivity, cannot introduce bias. It depends on the design constraints where you are administering your digital tools. So therefore, if probably I've identified a set of participants that I want to collect data for, I just sent my my digital tools, maybe in form of Google tools, Google Toolbox, and so on, and you administer them. So you don't have control about what they are answering. But once you identify your participants, you administer your question. So they don't introduce the bias. So being able to identify the right participants is the key to ensure or avoid such bias. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to apologize that we may not be able to take any new sets because we have just 3 minutes to the end of this program, and by the Big Day rules, we do not exceed the time. So I will invite the chairman to just in 1 minute, says his closing remarks. Thereafter, the facilitator general, Professor Peter Okebukola, will say they will say the closing remarks. The chairman, provost.
Okay, good afternoon. Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon. I want to thank. Good afternoon. I want to thank the organizers, the speakers, and my fellow academics or researchers for actively participating in this session. It is my hope that everyone has learned, has benefited maximally from this discussion. Please, I want to plead with those whose questions were not taken. They can reach out to the speakers at a later time. Thank you for all your contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As we look forward to seeing you in the next set of activities, I will invite the distinguished facilitator general, Professor Peter Okebukola.
Thank you, our boss, our Vice Chancellor Emeritus. By the way, I keep repeating this. He was Vice Chancellor IBB University for about 50 years. And he did so very well. I must tell you, I enjoyed every second of this session. I thank the chairman, thank our Deputy Facilitator General Administration, Professor Monioluwa Owolaniyi, who is the dread of nematodes. Nematodes, when they hear that one, they run all over, run outside the environment. And all our speakers, you have all done very well. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. From this session, and we look forward to the rest of the week and the rest of the course. Thank you, sir, Professor Leslie Miturari, Vice Emeritus. Thank you for all that you are doing in implementing this module 11. You are shaking the net. 11, 1, 1.
Can you please close the meeting, sir?
You are shaking the net.
Your guidance.
Shaking the net. Thank you, sir. Yeah, on that note, I'd like to close this second in the series of Monday live lectures. I wish you all well and have a very nice